A decorated black police captain is pulled over by one of his own, not because he broke the law, but because of the color of his skin. In front of his 10-year-old son, he's slammed to the ground, cuffed and nearly crushed, until one rookie officer uncovers a truth that changes everything. What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about justice, power, and the badge. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story, it is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the story. The sky over New Orleans hung low with a soft golden light, the kind that made even the cracked sidewalks look like something worth remembering. Captain Marcus Lane, off duty, and dressed in jeans and a Saints hoodie, guided his old black Chevy Impala through the winding neighborhoods of Treme. His 10-year-old son, Jaden, sat in the passenger seat, legs swinging, arms cradling a carefully wrapped box of cupcakes. It was a small detail. In a larger plan, Marcus had spent the afternoon secretly prepping for Jaden's surprise birthday party. Streamers, snacks, a rented projector for backyard movies. It was all waiting at home, hidden under blankets in the trunk. To the world, Marcus looked like any other father on a late afternoon errand. But behind the wheel sat one of the city's most respected police captains, a man who had worked his way up from beat cop to precinct head, praised for his integrity, his community leadership, his refusal to compromise. Yet on this quiet ride home, with the aroma of grocery store barbecue chicken filling the car, and Jaden chattering about school bullies, none of that mattered. Not the badge, not the rank, not the years of spotless service. All that mattered soon was the color of his skin. "Dad," Jaden asked, mouth half full of excitement, "what if there's a kid in my class who tries to push me around again?" Like last year, Marcus smiled, eyes on the road. "You remember what I told you?" Jaden nodded. "To stand up for myself, but not with fists unless I have to." "That's right," Marcus said. "Doing the right thing isn't always about being the loudest. Sometimes it's about knowing when to speak and when to walk away. Real strength is quiet." Jaden paused. "But what if the teacher doesn't believe me? What if they think I started it?" The question hung heavy in the cabin. Marcus's fingers tightened around the wheel. "Then we make them listen," he said softly. "Together." They stopped at a red light on St. Bernard Avenue. A jazz tune floated from the radio, blending with the muffled city life beyond the glass. It was a moment so ordinary, so full of peace, that neither of them noticed the patrol car 2 lanes behind them inching closer with predatory slowness. Marcus signaled to turn left onto North Claiborne. The patrol car changed lanes. Jaden didn't notice, but Marcus did. 2 more turns. The patrol car followed. His pulse ticked higher, a metronome of unwanted memories, being followed in a department store at 20, being pulled over outside his own apartment at 26, the way even his fellow officers sometimes hesitated before realizing who he was. He glanced at Jaden, still smiling, still talking. The lights flashed, red, blue, white. A siren yelped, then cut off as if ashamed. Jaden sat upright. "Dad, what's happening?" Marcus pulled over, slowly, deliberately. "It's okay. Probably just a mistake." He didn't believe it. He turned down. The music rolled down the window, and placed his hands on the wheel. Jaden mirrored him, small hands raised in silent obedience. Officer Brent Maddox approached with a swagger that spoke louder than his uniform. His mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, but the set of his jaw said everything. A veteran on the force, Maddox had served for over 20 years, but experience doesn't always breed wisdom. Sometimes it just calcifies prejudice. License and registration, he barked. Marcus didn't move. Officer, may I ask why I was pulled over? License. Registration. Now. Jaden flinched. Marcus moved slowly. It's in my wallet. My registration is in the glove box. I'm reaching now. Maddox's hand hovered over his holster. Marcus passed him both items calm, as a man reciting scripture. Maddox didn't even glance at them. You been drinking? He asked. No, sir. You sure about that? You look nervous. I'm with my son, sir. He's 10. Maddox leaned forward, ignoring Jaden completely. Your taillight's broken. Know anything about that? Marcus blinked. I don't believe it is. It is now. And then Maddox stepped back, walked to the rear of the car, and with a sickening crack, used his flashlight to smash the right taillight. Jaden gasped. Dad. He broke it. Stay calm, Marcus said. Maddox returned. Well, well. Look what we've got here. Broken taillight. Suspicious behavior. Might need to step out of the car. Marcus looked at him, measured his breath. Sir, he said, I'm a captain with the NOPD. Badge, twin 197. I'm off duty, but I assure you, don't care who you are. Maddox snapped. You people lie all the time. Jaden's voice broke through Dad. Why is he talking like that? Marcus reached into his back pocket for his ID, slowly, clearly. My badge is out of the car. Now. It wasn't a request. Marcus opened the door and stepped out, still holding his wallet in one hand. He stood tall, but he knew what Maddox saw, not a captain, not a father. Just another black man with a nice car in the wrong place. Jaden stayed frozen in the passenger seat, eyes wide with confusion, his cupcakes forgotten at his feet. Maddox circled Marcus like a vulture. What's in the trunk? Groceries. Party supplies. We'll see about that. He popped the trunk without asking. Inside a bag of charcoal plastic plates, balloons, a box marked Happy Birthday. Maddox reached in and pulled something out, a box cutter from the party decorations. He held it like a weapon. Concealed blade, he muttered. Interesting. That's not a weapon, Marcus said. It's for the decorations. Sure it is. Then Maddox raised his voice, called in backup, and began unfastening his cuffs. Marcus didn't move. This wasn't a mistake. It was a ritual. He'd seen it lived, it fought against it his whole life, but it still found him. Jaden started to cry, and Marcus, surrounded by flashing lights, held his hands out, not because he was guilty, but because he was black. Not because he feared the cuffs, but because he feared what would happen to his son if he resisted. And as the sirens grew louder in the distance, drowning out his name, his rank, his humanity, Marcus Lane prepared to be erased. Again. Marcus Lane didn't flinch when the 2nd Patrol Unit pulled up behind him. His mind, trained by years in law enforcement, had already calculated the signals. 2 cars. Back up. That meant escalation. He stood motionless beside his own vehicle, arms calmly at his sides, the weight of his badge still resting in his back pocket, unseen, irrelevant to the man in front of him. Officer Brent Maddox paced slowly, eyes narrowed, savoring control. He ignored Jaden's frightened gaze through the window and instead leaned into Marcus's space with the kind of practiced confidence that came from knowing he'd never been held accountable. "You didn't answer my question," Maddox said. "You've been drinking." Using Marcus kept his voice level. "I've already answered." "No." "Well, maybe you forgot what's in your car." "Mind if I take a look?" "You don't have probable cause?" "Broken taillight, suspicious behavior, uncooperative attitude," Maddox replied, eyes gleaming. "That's plenty of cause." He turned, signaling his partner with a chin nod. Then, without permission, he began searching the back seat, rifling through the grocery bags, lifting party favors, then casually tossing aside a tray of cupcakes. A couple fell onto the pavement. One landed upside down. "Hey," Jaden yelled through the glass, but his voice was too small, too scared. Maddox didn't stop. Instead, he took a step back toward the rear tire and dropped something small near the bumper, barely noticeable, like tossing a wrapper. Marcus saw it. He knew the gesture. Too fast, too smooth. Something planted. But he also knew better than to accuse. Not yet. Not with his son sitting just feet away watching everything. "What's that?" Maddox asked, crouching theatrically. "Well, well, what do we have here?" He held up a folded envelope. Inside was a wad of cash and an unlabeled USB drive. "This yours?" he asked, voice thick with false innocence. Marcus shook his head slowly. "You just planted that." "Watch your mouth," Maddox snapped. "You just confessed to tampering with evidence." "You know what this is?" Marcus replied. "It's a setup." Maddox grinned, eyes hidden behind his mirrored sunglasses. "Maybe you should have thought of that before making me chase lies." Jaden's face was pressed to the window, now panic rising. "Dad, what's happening?" Marcus raised one hand, slowly signaling him to stay still. "It's okay, son. Stay in the car." But it wasn't okay. Maddox stepped forward again, removing his cuffs. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "I'm not resisting," Marcus said. "But this is an unlawful arrest. I am Captain Marcus Lane of the NOPD. Badge 2197. Verify me." Maddox froze, the name landing like a misfired bullet, but only for a second. Then he smirked. "Captain, huh? And I'm the mayor. Get on the ground. Check your database. Call it in." "I said get on the ground." Maddox's tone cut through the air. Jaden screamed. Marcus didn't move. And then Maddox lunged. He shoved Marcus backward with force, slamming him against the hood of the Impala. The metal rang out beneath Marcus's ribs. His breath left his lungs in a sharp grunt. One knee pressed down hard against his back as Maddox forced both arms behind him. The cuffs clicked shut with mechanical finality. A voice called from the sidewalk. "Hey, what are you doing?" Another yo. Is he resisting? Phones were raised. Cameras rolled. Jaden's window slid open. "Stop, you're hurting him." "That's my dad." "Stay in the car, boy." Maddox barked, twisting Marcus's arms tighter. "This is what happens when you mess around." "Please," Jaden cried. "You're hurting him." "Shut it," Maddox shouted. "Your dad's a criminal, and you'll end up just like him if you don't learn your place." On the far side of the patrol cars, a rookie officer stepped forward. Carla Reyes. She'd been silent the whole time, watching, unsure. But her face had changed. Her eyes widened as Maddox pressed his knee against Marcus's neck. Not a full weight, not a chokehold, but a message. A warning. Marcus gasped. "I can't breathe." Reyes stepped closer. "Sir, you need to ease up." Maddox didn't budge. "I said ease up." "You're new, Reyes. Learn the ropes. This guy's lying." "Look at him." "I am looking at him," she said, her voice cracking slightly. Marcus, breath shallow, turned his face slightly toward her. "Badge 2197. he rasped. "Captain Marcus Lane, look me up. Right now." Reyes froze. Jaden was now halfway out the car, his small body trembling. "Please help him." "He didn't do anything," Maddox snarled. "Get that kid back in the car." Reyes pulled out her device, typing furiously. Her eyes darted back and forth, and then she stopped. Her whole body went rigid. "Sir," she said, voice steady now, "you need to get off him. Immediately." "What are you talking about?" "He's telling the truth. That's Captain Lane, my commanding officer." Maddox turned to her, blood draining from his face. "You must have made a mistake." "I didn't. That's him." Reyes stepped forward, hand on her holstered weapon, not drawn, but not relaxed either. "Let him go. Now." Maddox stood stunned, backing away slowly. The air shifted. The tension cracked. Marcus rolled onto his side, coughing wrists still cuffed behind him. Reyes dropped beside him. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "You do now," he said, voice hoarse but controlled. "Take these off." She did. Jaden ran into his father's arms, sobbing. Marcus held him tightly, blood on his lip, his shirt smeared with dirt and gravel. Maddox stammered. This was a misunderstanding. He didn't identify himself. Marcus looked up at him, pain in his eyes, but not surprise. This wasn't a mistake, he said. This was a pattern. He helped his son to his feet. "You saw my skin before you saw my badge, and I've lived that my entire life." The crowd was larger now, phones still recording. No one spoke. Not yet. But the silence screamed louder than any siren ever could. Marcus Lane's breathing came in ragged, uneven waves as the last of the handcuffs clicked free. He didn't get up right away. His body, conditioned for discipline and trained for endurance, needed a moment to remember it wasn't in danger anymore, or at least not in immediate danger. He rolled onto his side slowly, the gravel biting into his forearm, his ribs screaming from the pressure that had been on his back. His uniform may not have been on him, but the damage found him anyway. Jaden threw his arms around his father's chest, sobbing into his shirt. "Dad, I thought you were going to die." Marcus pulled him close, wincing at the motion. "I'm okay, son. I'm here." His voice was thin, stretched from the weight of injustice rather than the struggle for breath. He looked up at Officer Carla Reyes, her face a canvas of guilt realization and the early stirrings of resolve. She knelt beside him. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it sooner." Marcus gave a weak shake of his head. "You did stop it, and that might have saved my life." Brent Maddox stood a few paces back, jaw clenched, face pale. His eyes darted between the gathering crowd and Reyes, who now held the weight of rank and truth. He had underestimated both. "This is all one big misunderstanding." Maddox said louder now, reaching for authority he no longer owned. "If he had just identified himself earlier—" "I did," Marcus said sharply, coughing. "Twice. You were aggressive. Uncooperative." No Reyes cut in her voice, now unwavering. "You were. You planted evidence, used excessive force, and you nearly crushed a man who outranks both of us. There is no misunderstanding. There is misconduct." The crowd murmured. Marcus finally stood, leaning slightly on the car for balance. The badge was still in his back pocket. He pulled it out slowly and held it high, not as a shield, but as a mirror. "This is what you ignored," he said, facing Maddox. "Not because it wasn't visible, but because the skin behind it made you blind to what it meant." Jaden looked up at his father in awe. The strength it took to speak, not in rage, but in truth, burned brighter than any uniform. "I've led officers like you. I've trained rookies like her. Marcus continued nodding to Reyes. But this is the moment I've warned them about. When instinct gets warped by bias. When the badge becomes a weapon instead of a promise. Reyes stepped forward. Sir, I'll be submitting a full report. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. Marcus looked at her with tired gratitude. That's how it starts. Someone choosing right over rank. Maddox scoffed, trying to salvage his footing. You people are always playing victim. Marcus's eyes darkened. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You put your knee on the neck of a police captain in front of his 10-year-old son. You called him a criminal. You silenced a fellow officer who tried to speak up. And now, you're worried about appearances. Maddox took a step back. Save your breath, Marcus added. You're going to need it where you're headed. As paramedics arrived, called by someone in the crowd, Marcus allowed them to examine him. His ribs were bruised, wrist chafed raw. Jaden never let go of his hand. As the ambulance doors opened, a young girl from the crowd stepped forward with her phone still recording. Sir, she asked, what do you want people to know about this? Marcus paused, breathing through pain. That justice isn't found in badges or titles, he said. It's found in who has the courage to act when the wrong thing is happening right in front of them. He climbed into the ambulance. Jaden followed close behind his small frame, wrapped in a blanket someone from the crowd had given him. Reyes stood in the middle of the street as the vehicle drove away. Her radio crackled with dispatch chatter, but for once she didn't respond. She looked up at the fading blue sky, a storm on her conscience, and something unfamiliar blooming in her chest: accountability. Later that night, the footage from bystanders began making rounds online. The hashtags were swift and sharp. Captain Lane, justice in uniform, just not a threat. Within hours, the video amassed tens of thousands of views. A black man in plain clothes slammed to the ground by someone wearing the same colors he once believed in. But something was different this time. The man on the ground wasn't anonymous. He had a name, a record of service, a rank that meant something, and a son who had captured it all through the shaky lens of a child's horror and unflinching truth. The world watched. Some defended, some denied, but many paused long enough to ask the uncomfortable question: if a police captain could be profiled, cuffed, and nearly killed, then what chance did anyone else have? And as that question echoed through New Orleans and beyond, Marcus Lane lay in a hospital bed, holding his son's hand, replaying every second in his mind. His body would heal, but the bruise beneath the badge that would take much longer, because it wasn't just his body that had been broken. It was the illusion that being one of the good ones could protect him from the truth he'd always known, but never imagined his son would have to witness so soon. That in America, even the badge bows beneath the weight of bias. The hospital room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of a lamp by the window. Marcus Lane sat upright in bed. His torso bandaged, his ribs sore, but his spirit far from broken. Jaden had fallen asleep in the chair next to him, arms curled across his chest, still clutching the little notepad he had been using to draw superheroes, except today, the hero didn't wear a cape. He wore bruises and dignity. Marcus stared at the ceiling, reliving the moment Brent Maddox's knee pressed down on him, not just physically, but symbolically. That pressure didn't end with oxygen being stolen from his lungs. It extended to every breath he'd taken since. He'd always believed his rank might shield him even just a little, but now he knew it never truly could. Uniform or not, the world still saw his blackness first. By the next morning, The video had gone viral. There were hashtags, debates, outrage, denial. Commentators dissected it on television. Experts gave interviews. But what stuck with Marcus the most were the messages, hundreds of them, from fellow officers, parents, community members, and strangers. Some expressed heartbreak, some offered apologies, and some from young black boys and girls simply read, "Thank you. You made us feel seen." That was when Marcus knew silence wasn't an option. 2 weeks later, with his side still aching and scars still fresh, Marcus stood before the New Orleans Public Safety Board. The City Hall meeting was packed. Community members crowded into the room, officers sat rigid in uniform, and cameras flashed from the press row. Jaden was in the front, next to Officer Carla Reyes, who had insisted on attending. When Marcus took the podium, he didn't clear his throat. He didn't fumble. He simply looked out at the crowd and said, "I almost died. Not because I was guilty, but because someone decided I looked like someone who could be." A hush fell over the room. I've worn the badge for over 18 years. I've led investigations, trained new recruits, and worked alongside officers of every race, and yet all it took was one man's prejudice to reduce me to a threat. He spoke slowly, with purpose, not just about the incident, but about the broader disease of bias that infects the very structure meant to protect. He didn't demand revenge. He demanded reckoning. This isn't about one bad cop. It's about a system that emboldens them, protects them, and remains silent when they act. I didn't survive that night because I was lucky. I survived because a rookie had the courage to say, "Enough." And that courage needs to be the rule, not the exception. Officer Reyes rose and walked to the podium. Her voice shook at first, but steadied quickly. I watched my partner abuse his authority. I saw the fear in a child's eyes. I saw a man almost die. And I stayed quiet for too long, but not anymore. The room erupted in applause, not for drama, but for truth. In the weeks that followed, Marcus launched a program called Badge and Justice. The goal was simple: build bridges before the next fire started. Officers were paired with local community leaders, pastors, teachers, business owners, artists for monthly dialogue sessions. Not press events, conversations, real ones. He hosted forums at schools, barbershops, and community centers. Not to lecture, but to listen. And Jaden came to many of them. He asked hard questions. He drew pictures of what justice looked like. And eventually, with his dad's help, he wrote a children's book, Heroes Don't Hurt People. The story followed a young boy who teaches his neighborhood what real strength means and how to stand up for someone even when it's hard. At one elementary school assembly, Marcus was invited to speak. As he took the mic, he looked out at a sea of young faces, some full of curiosity, others already hardened by experience. He didn't start with statistics or speeches. He told a story. "I'm not just a police officer," he said. "I'm a father." And one night someone forgot that. They saw a threat, not a man. But my son saw everything. And now we both carry the mission to make sure no child ever has to watch their hero fall just because someone refused to see his humanity. Jaden beamed from the front row. Marcus had spent years wearing the uniform, but now his truest authority came not from rank, but from the truth he had the courage to speak, from the pain he refused to bury, and from the voice he used to transform a moment of humiliation into a movement of accountability. The badge no longer defined him. The voice did. Months had passed, but the street still held the echo of that night. Captain Marcus Lane stood once more at the very corner where his breath had almost been stolen, not by accident, but by assumption. Jaden walked beside him, older somehow, even though only time had changed, not the questions that still lingered in his son's eyes. The city around them was beginning to move forward, but Marcus knew real healing didn't come with time. It came with transformation. And transformation was slow, demanding, and often lonely. Officer Brent Maddox had been placed under investigation, then quietly removed from the force. No press conference, no formal apology, just a name buried in a report and a legacy buried in shame. For Marcus, that wasn't justice. It was a beginning. Because what mattered now wasn't that Maddox was gone, but that the mirror he had cracked remained standing, forcing the department to look at itself with no excuse left to turn away. Marcus had been offered another promotion, something ceremonial, a title meant to soften the blow. He turned it down. Instead, he chose the harder path. He became a policy advisor on systemic reform, working with precincts across the state to implement new protocols around racial profiling, de-escalation, and community engagement. He didn't want a desk. He wanted the power to rewrite the rules. He helped establish a civilian oversight board, fought for body cam footage to be made public within 48 hours, and developed anti-bias training that included voices from those who had lived through the trauma, not just talked about it. But more than anything, he mentored, not from a podium, but face to face. He sat down with young officers, especially those of color, who had been taught to survive in silence. He told them, "Your presence is not a threat, but your silence can be." He taught them that courage wasn't pulling someone over. It was standing up when someone in uniform went too far. It was saying no when the culture around them whispered yes. At home, Jaden flourished. He asked sharper questions, read history books Marcus had once taught from. And when a local news station asked him what he learned from that night, he answered without hesitation. "My dad got hurt, but he made the city better." It wasn't just pride, it was clarity. Because Jaden no longer saw the badge as protection, it was responsibility. And his father had carried it, even when it felt like a target. One afternoon, Marcus took his son back to the corner where it all happened. The asphalt looked the same. The sun cast the same shadows, but the silence was different now. No sirens, no shouting, just reflection. "This is where it happened," Marcus said, kneeling beside Jaden. "But this isn't where it ends." Jaden reached out and took his father's hand. "What happens next?" Marcus looked out at the road, his voice steady. "What happens next is up to us." The department had changed, not enough, not fast, but visibly. Officers greeted citizens by name at community events. The Badge and Justice program was now in 6 precincts across Louisiana. And Marcus had just been invited to speak at a national summit on equity in law enforcement. But the real victory wasn't in speeches or headlines. It was in one quiet truth. Marcus Lane had survived not just the stop, not just the weight of Maddox's knee, but the system that allowed it to happen. And he had turned his survival into a blueprint. He wasn't just a man in uniform. He was a mirror, one that forced others to confront what they had ignored for too long, that justice isn't about protection. For some, it's about dignity for all. As they walked back to the car, Marcus turned to his son and said something he'd carried for years, but had never spoken aloud. "Real power," he said, "isn't about control. It's about conviction." It's about walking forward when the world tries to push you down and doing it with your head high, even when your heart is heavy. Jaden nodded, not just hearing the words, but understanding them. And with that, the two of them drove off, not away from what happened, but toward what could still be built from it. Together, Captain Marcus Lane's story began like so many others with quiet dignity, simple intentions, and the unshakable love of a father for his son. A peaceful drive through the streets of New Orleans, a trunk full of groceries, a young boy asking big questions about life fairness and courage. It was supposed to be a normal day. But for black men in America, normal can change in an instant. Pulled over without reason, disrespected without hesitation, and brutalized without justification. Marcus's experience revealed a painful truth that too many have lived. It doesn't matter who you are, what title you hold, or how perfectly you follow the rules. When systemic bias sees your skin before it sees your soul, your life can be put on the line in a heartbeat. What made this story different wasn't just the twist that Marcus was a police captain. It wasn't just that his son watched his hero be thrown to the ground. It was what came after the choice not to stay silent, the decision to turn trauma into truth, and truth into transformation. Marcus didn't seek revenge. He didn't burn bridges. He built them. From hospital hallways to city council chambers, he used his voice to expose what too many are still too afraid to say out loud, that racism in law enforcement isn't about a few bad apples. It's about a system that allows rot to spread without consequence. And until that changes, no badge, no matter how honorable, can guarantee safety for everyone. But he didn't stop there. Marcus created change that rippled outward. He launched programs that connected officers and communities. He helped write policies that made transparency mandatory, not optional. He stood in front of students, young officers, city leaders, and he told them the truth even when it was uncomfortable, especially when it was uncomfortable. And through it all, he stayed a father first. Jaden didn't just watch his dad survive. He watched him lead, not with power, but with principle. Not with fury, but with focus. Their bond became a symbol of what's possible when the next generation is taught not just how to endure injustice, but how to challenge it with integrity. So what is the lesson in all of this? It's simple. Real justice begins where silence ends. You don't need a title to stand for what's right. You don't need a badge to call out wrong. You need courage. You need clarity. And you need community. Ask yourself, in a moment of injustice, will you be the one who stands up or the one who stays silent? Will you raise your voice even when the cost feels high? Because change doesn't start in institutions. It starts in individuals. People like Marcus. People like Officer Reyes, who broke ranks to save a life. People like Jaden, who reminded us that the fight for dignity begins at home. Captain Marcus Lane's story is not just his. It belongs to every father who fears for his child, every child who watches the world with wide eyes and hopes it can be better, every citizen who believes that justice must be more than a word, it must be a shared commitment. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or made you feel something you can't shake, help us keep stories like this alive. Subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the world a little better, because your support gives us the strength to keep telling the truth, one powerful, necessary story at a time. Let's be louder than silence. Let's make sure no voice like Marcus Lane's ever goes unheard again.